All right. We seem to be live. We're just going to confirm here that we are live. What is going on? There we go. Oh, what's going on? Hang on. Hang on there, folks. We're just making sure that we are live on Rumble. And it looks like, that's a recorded stream. I don't know why we are not live. There we are. Very good. Okay. I have no idea why the stream cut out this morning. This afternoon, sorry. 37 minutes late into it. My deepest apologies, folks. Well, welcome to the nap, where we normally preface the question period 45 minutes prior, not 7 minutes late, by a review of the far left evil that has beset our land and the events that surround it. The nap is a daily show when the House sits, or until the government decides to stop showing up for work. We are streaming on 3 platforms: Rumble. Well, now we are Rumble, CommuTube, and X. So please give us a like, thumbs up, follow, share, subscribe. Most of all, the chat is up, so please feel free to ask us anything. Now let us move on to our next panel. Now, what we've been doing every single show prior to covering what's going on in the House is we've been giving updates on what's been happening over at the ostrich farm, and I've been trying not to pay attention to this so that I can just look it up before the show so we can give you guys an update, because it's getting more and more upsetting. But then again, this decision that has come down is really not surprising.
Out in British Columbia, but it's much appreciated.
Yeah.
So of course, as you notified me the other night, and as has been reported in a lot of the mainstream and independent media, you have been unsuccessful in your appeal to overturn the Canadian Food Inspection Agency's order that you essentially eradicate, kill 399 of your ostriches.
Mhm.
So I can't say I'm shocked, because I know governments hang together, but when did you first hear the news, Katie?
Wasn't yesterday? Was the day before, Thursday? Yeah. So we got the notification from our lawyer that we were unsuccessful in our federal court of appeals with 3 judges. It came back as a unanimous no. Honestly, it was a little shocking. We thought we would get a split decision in there at least. But I guess then that's what we're looking is for some common sense, which I think what you're talking about right now just doesn't exist. We're really struggling where we're looking at it's a dangerous precedence, because with Canada taking the directives from the World Health Organization and the World Animal Health Organization, that's being chosen over Canadian sovereignty, and we're putting our Canadian citizens at risk by food security, food shortage, and killing off natural immunity.
There it is, just as I pretty well predicted would happen, because the fix was in from the very beginning. I did a video almost a month ago. That was the title of it. I think it was "The Fix is In." There was no way around it. The way the legislation was set up, the judges' hands were tied. This is pure global communism. And it's just one more example of why the government shouldn't be given overreach powers like they do. And the Conservatives have been very, very quiet on this, other than a few members who've been trying to say something about it, some of the few MPs. But overall, it's not like they woke up and had a consensus and said, hey, you know what? We did something wrong in the past. We should not have written Bill S11. We should not have given that to one of our senators to move forward. We should have not, in that bill, put in legislation that allowed CFIA to create their own legislation that now forces the judges to abide by that law that was never written by members of parliament, by the people. or voted on for by the people. This is like the worst type of bureaucracy you could ever have. Bureaucrats creating their own bureaucracy that cannot be questioned at any time. It's Kafka-esque to the nth degree. And the conservatives brought that legislation in under their senator, the senator that Harper appointed back in 2009. So, it's just, I know the conservatives are able to take responsibility when they make errors in the past, and I think this is a time when they need to speak up on this, and they haven't really. They said a few things, but they really haven't explained their part in it and why it's wrong. Right? They haven't just gone out and explained why it's wrong. Well, it's still getting some international news, but we'll see. Like we reported yesterday, the local tribe served the RCMP and Safe IA, said you're trespassing, get the hell off our land. So we'll see which one has more woke power. I mean, the conservative, not the conservatives, the governments, both municipal, provincial, and currently liberal federal, in a lot of areas have just been giving up their land now to the natives, like we've seen in Richmond. So anything, the path of least resistance for these weak fools is what they will always choose, because they are weak people. We usually go to the live feed for the farm, but I can't, not with that decision right now. All right, so our daily update on, oh, look at this. We're up to 2.916 million signatures for do not introduce digital ID in the UK. Right, the first one of the three major nations of what's left of the Commonwealth, UK, Australia, and Canada. Canada hasn't introduced it yet, but you know it's coming. And you have almost 3 million citizens saying, F no. And of course, the Labour government is saying, oh, that means you want it. Then we'll give it for you. But if anybody follows UK politics, you know that Starmer's not having a good time right now. His cabinet is just pulling pin, jumping off the plane with their parachutes, and leaving them be. Scandal after scandal after scandal, and these guys could be in power for another 3 years. It's insane. Parliamentary politics. Now, if you have been following the news, you may have heard something about Pierre Poilievre having said something about the efficacy of the RCMP. And of course, the left have just been beating that drum non-stop, because for them on the left are like, oh, our public servants, they can't be touched. They do nothing wrong, ever wrong, right? When you say they do something wrong, you're being mean. You're being a mean man, and you shouldn't be doing that, right? So of course, Poilievre just pointed out that pretty well. There's a lot of criminality that they have chosen not to investigate, and everybody said that because he said this, he's a bad man. Well, if you remember, there was a letter that was released back in April last year. Actually, I did one of my earliest videos covered this letter by a couple of RCMP, one retired, one serving, basically warning that there's a lot of foreign influence happening in Canada. The government's not doing anything about it, and they named names. Right? They named names of cabinet ministers that were serving then and that are serving now. And of course, this is all part and parcel with this ongoing thing with foreign interference, allowing cartels to operate in our areas, being just answering to the Chinese communists the way they just give stuff to them, like the $1 billion for building a ferry instead of, finding it here, making the deals. Well, Carney does have a lot of trade deals going on over there. I mean, privately for his personal portfolio, right? And if anybody wants to know the personal portfolio, we do this at least once a week. Moose on a Loose has a massive spreadsheet where he tracks everything, all his shares, all the ownership that he has, his investments. This is why we know there's 91% of his investments that are actually in the United States, maybe less than 3% in Canada. The rest is like sprinkled around all over. And of course, tracking his lies, tracking all the people that he's worked with in the past, that he's now appointing to positions now, giving them like a $500,000 salary, just creating new departments because, the existing departments that we have are just not good enough, right? And as you can see, this sheet, it's just going to keep loading and loading and loading. And there's just so much information on here. A lot of information. All right. Let's get back to our story panel. Now, there's just so much that the RCMP is not doing, that they are not investigating. So, of course, when you have somebody that brings up the fact that management's not doing their job and they seem to be avoiding dealing with their political bosses, you kind of have to start making some assumptions that maybe there's some political influence going on here. So this is an interview on Northern Perspective. Just going to play a little snippet here. I suggest you go and watch the entire video, especially the preamble that came up to this little part right here.
It's internal.
Pete Merrifield, you mentioned, is a sergeant in the RCMP, so he's a part of one of these organizations that seems to be involved in this sort of thing. What's been going on with him?
Well, again, another tentacle to this massive cover up, because really, ultimately, that's what it is. I mean, let's call it for what it truly is. We wrote this letter, myself and Sergeant Merrifield together. We wrote an open letter, as you know, to Carney and the Liberals. And we mentioned the Section 38 do not disclose issue, which is obviously injurious to Canada's relationship with China, as we try to have a relationship with them as we have this week. I'm hoping the Chinese will probably ask Mr. Carney about this do not disclose confidential appendix released by the RCMP and our public prosecution service. And that letter was written in early April of this year.
EVE to me is basically freedom. It's a giant open universe where you can do whatever.
Now, we never received a response from anybody on that. Nobody wanted to talk to us. Fair enough. But in August, Merrifield was required as a witness in the Miker case, subpoenaed by the defense counsel for some issues surrounding Merrifield's suspension by the RCMP some 18 months ago now, for his relationship with Miker, ultimately cleared of any wrongdoing and reinstated. So bear that in mind.
So he was called as a witness by the defense.
Correct, because there's a crossover between the investigation of Pete and how it relates to the Miker case. So in August of this year, he was subpoenaed by the defense. Merrifield notified the RCMP, as he should, and basically was threatened that if he appears for this subpoena, there will be repercussions. So,
yeah, this is political interference in the RCMP happening right now. Going on since the summer. Actually, there's been political interference in the RCMP forever, but, more proof right here. This cop that they're going after, the sergeant, decorated sergeant, just got an award for excellent policing this year. And, of course, now they're going after his job. They're going after his job because he's ethical. He's ethical and moral, and he's actually doing it. And it's embarrassing his superiors, and it's embarrassing his political masters. So he has to go. He has to go. Go watch this interview. Outstanding interview over at Northern Perspective. And I'm telling you, independent media is making the mainstream media look like the CQJO sycophants that they are. What am I talking about? This. QCJO. Still trying to get a hang of this acronym. Qualified Canadian Journalism Organization. Little CRA sign in for them here, right? So every time you see mainstream media on TV, all the newspapers that you see around, Most of the posts that you see on X, and of course in Canada, you won't see any of that news on Facebook because this is all part of the same tax scheme that the Liberals have brought in several legislations and rules and bills in order to suck money out of everyone else in order to give it to their mainstream media that nobody wants to watch because it's the only thing keeping them alive. So this right here, Qualified Canadian Journalism Organization, gives each of the journalists close to 30 grand a year in order for them to give government propaganda. And I guess if a news organization gets a little too independent, then I guess they get their little CRA sign-in thing removed. How do we know this? Well, because we know the Liberal government is actively working at removing charitable status right now for various organizations. They just did it to the Council of, CJA? It was one of the Jewish associations. It's been working in charity for years. Oh, yeah. And of course, we know they're actively working to get rid of allowing Christians to be, or not Christians, but churches. They want to get rid of the churches have an ability to have their tax exemption as well, because it's all part of their ideological matrix to control information, to control your minds. So only QCJO approved journalists are allowed to become part of the little cadre that they have in Parliament. And that little cadre there, of course, is also put in place by Liberals, and then they decide who the journalists can be in there. So it's very hard for independent media, even large independent media organizations that have been around now for 10 years or just a little less, such as Ring News, Juno News, which is now an offshoot of True North. Well, I guess if you combine the fact that they started as True North, 5 years for them. And you have a lot of other little startup news organizations that have gone ahead and done this QCJO, have been around a lot less, and they're able to fund themselves by doing this by basically copying, pasting government handouts of information onto their sites. Yes, I think we covered a bit of that yesterday. Now a little X post here from Mario for the North. And Mario Zalea. Now we were just started to get through this yesterday, and question period started. And this is again following on the entire aspect of apparently the RCMP being corrupt and them not doing proper investigations when it comes to politics. And the Liberals and all their Liberal friends keep clamoring for apologies. Oh, you're mean. You should not be talking about the RCMP. You have no trust in law and order. You want to destroy law and order. All the straw man arguments that you could come up with. They're just coming up with things. When I've always said, the proof is in the pudding. Know them by what they do, is normally what I say. I'm trying to leave the pudding analogy out of it. But know them by what they do, or in this case, what they don't do. Right, so let's go back down this list. Since we got interrupted yesterday, at the top of the line. The Green Slush Fund, $1 billion, refusing to hand RCMP documents and froze government. And he's talking about June 2024, when after the SDTC, which was also involved into the vaccine passport scam that they had going, well, apparently a whole bunch of money missing, like hundreds of millions of dollars gone. Nobody knows. Nobody wants to know where it is. So the committee dealing, OGO, the mighty OGO, as they call it, asked for these documents to be tabled. And there was a vote in committee, and because there's a minority government, and like there was a minority government in the previous government before that as well, they don't have full control of the committee, unless of course they can get the lone NDP person on the committee to side with them during the committee meeting. Then they can outvote the Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois if they decide they want some documents. And in this case here, everybody wanted to see the documents. Good on the NDP for finally having a little bit of accountability. So the committee wanted the documents, and the Liberals gave them the documents. 5,000 pages worth of redacted documents. So they said, well, that's not acceptable. We need to see the documents. So they went to the Speaker of the House, and the Speaker, it's right here in the Green Book, you have to address our point of order that the government has refused to hand over these documents, and until they produce them, we need a ruling on what they can do from here on. And the Speaker ruled, and he said, well, until you produce the documents, you can no longer do any business in the lower house. You can't introduce any new bills. You can't vote on existing bills. You can't vote on anything unless you get an approval from all the other parties in the House at the same time that this matter can actually be dealt with in the lower house. And then once you get their permission, then you can actually deal with it, which is what happened actually a couple of times prior to the last election. I don't know, they did something before Christmas, something after Christmas, right? But that was it. Other than that, no new business, which is great because they had a lot of detrimental bills on the go that would have destroyed our accessibility to freedom and free speech. The same bills that they're redoing now, which is why it wouldn't be a bad thing if we got Parliament prorogued again. It's everything would die. Right? Which is great because we've had prorogation that killed any bills that were there. We've had this issue where they wouldn't hand over documents. But the thing is, the mighty Ogo is still sitting again, as like it does in every session, and I know that they are going to be tabling to ask for these documents that have gone missing, and because the demand is still there. So more to follow on that little green slush fund, and I don't know if it's going to be talked later on down here, but I think this is all part of the cycle capital money as well. That our Hans Gruber of climate change, who is currently the cultural minister, he's got his fingers in that as well. And speaking of fingers and things, SNC Lavalin, Trudeau interfered, fired Attorney General, major corruption charges. Right, so we had a native woman, a woman of native ancestry who was our Attorney General. And Trudeau went to her and say, "Yeah, can you let my friends over at SNC Lavalin off the hook with these, these charges?" And she's like, "My job as Attorney General is to follow the law." So Trudeau fired her. SNC Lavalin never had anything done to them. We Charity, $912 million contract. Imagine that, almost $1 billion of taxpayer money just out the window. Poof, off to his friends and family, just like that. Massive violation of ethics law. Doesn't matter. Even if there's any, like if you look in Parliament and you look at the fines that politicians can get, I think the highest fine for them is like $5,000. Sorry, not $5,000, $500. And Moose on a Loose is quite often saying this on his channel. He's often saying that, these politicians, they should be fined whenever they lie at Parliament. Well, the Green Book allows for a lot of things. It would need a serious change in legislative procedures. And I wouldn't even want to think of that task. It's not that it can't be done. It's not that the old guard can't be swept away and a new regime put in place. We've had enough government changes in the past in history on this planet to see that, but it's just the problem is that in most cases, those revolutions normally always lead to something worse. Normally. Not always, but normally. Our neighbors down to the south proved the elites in Europe were wrong on that one. Lost infrastructure funds, billions unaccounted for in green transit projects. Oh yes, Climate Barbie, what's her name? McKellen? Barbie McKellen, you know what I'm talking about. She was in Trudeau's cabinet. She was the environment minister, or what? They keep changing the names on these things. Is it the green scam? We'll just call him the green scam minister. There was billions. Was it $30 billion worth of missing infrastructure money, 20,000 projects unaccounted for, and that was before the third election, since the Liberals got voted in 2015, and no traction. Mainstream media couldn't care less. Why? Why could the mainstream media not care less about coverage things? Because they're all qualified Canadian journalist organizations. That's why they don't cover that stuff. Emergencies Act, court ruled illegal, right? The Liberals were embarrassed, super embarrassed for what they did. And they couldn't get rid of these peaceful protesters. They were keeping the streets clean. They were feeding the homeless. And no matter how much propaganda they kept throwing at them with their mainstream media, there was too much streaming happening on the ground, covering every minute of what was happening. That was showing a complete opposite picture of the message that they were trying to sell to the rest of Canada. Because we were seeing live streaming on the streets in front of Parliament, people having a good time, keeping the streets clean, everybody being polite for each other, dancing around, with the bouncy castles and all that, and interviews with people, and the streets were clean. It was great. The only thing that made it worse is everyone that hated them because they were interfering with their message of forced vaccination. Couldn't have any of that. So what did they do? They seized $10 million that they raised for the protest. And then 2 days later, they had another $10 million raised. And that's when the Liberals panicked. Because in a single year, the Liberals at that point could barely raise $8 million for their party. And here you had a protest group able to raise 10 million, not once, but twice, and the second time in 2 days. They can't raise $10 million in a year, and these guys did it in 2 days. They bloody panicked. So they invoked the Emergencies Act just to clear out the traffic, because there was no emergency, which is why the courts found that they invoked it illegally, right? And all those people who were involved that invoked it illegally, where are they today? Oh, they're waiting on the recent ruling, right? Because they've appealed it. They appealed it so quickly, there was no way they could have read the ruling. They were just going to appeal it for appealing's sake. Kicking that can down the road like they do all the time. Let's kick that down the road. And then finally, when the bill is due, will any of them be around? Will it just be a shell of what was left before that actually invoked these things? And who makes out like a beast in all this? All the lawyers. And especially the government lawyers, and who doesn't make out is the taxpayer, because who's paying for all these bloody government lawyers? Canadians. It's just no accountability whatsoever. But this story is not done yet, right? Because we're still waiting for the court decision on the appeal. LeBlanc family deal, $28 million contract to cousin's company. Ethics breach ignored. Aga Khan trip. This was one of the things that Pierre Polyev mentioned. And this is where we got stopped yesterday before the question period started. Aga Khan, yes, family friend of the Trudeaus for decades. However, the government had given this guy's, who's apparently rich, right, and has his own charity. They gave like $10 million to his charity or his business. Doesn't matter. Canadians gave money, Aga. And Justin went and stayed in Aga's for free. I don't care if he's a family friend. The optics are completely bad. Just first off, giving the money to your friend, and then hanging out there. And of course, and him acting like, oh, what are you talking about? I'm a feminist. Lost infrastructure funds, billions unspent or missing from transit and green projects. Yes, there's several green funds missing. And that's the whole part of running a green scam, is that you just keep scamming. I mean, one scam every day, you have to have at least 3 scams a day happening. And if you're lucky, none of them will get caught. And then the next day you do another 3 scams. And every day you do this. And then, of course, if scams pop up, you already have a script pre-written, or we're looking into it, or we had no idea this was happening in the department, or yes, we're very concerned. We agree with Canadians that something must need to be done. Blah, 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 blah. They'll bloody say something because they don't care, because they know they got another 3 scams coming out today that you might not catch. And then finally, when you start catching on to the scams, there's so many of them, you can't keep track. And there's a reason for that. It's to collapse the entire system. So in the meantime, they got to make away like bandits and steal everything that they can. Grab everything that isn't nailed down. WPG Lab, secret China-linked lab. That's the Winnipeg viral lab with the level, 3, 5, whatever the lab was. Scientists escorted out, documents hidden. We don't know what's happening because it embarrasses the government. Anything that embarrasses the government, they don't want to talk about, and they're going to hide. That's pretty well it. Governor General's expenses, $3 million plus spent on luxury trips. It's just insane. The Governor Generals that have been appointed by this Liberal government, they run around like royalty while Canadians are starving. $2 million at the food banks every month. But this government's just pumping out billions out the door to their friends, to poor people, because there's not enough poor people here out in Africa for their transgender, climate, farming, feminist bullshit. Because Canadians, oh no, what do they do for Canada? Oh, all the departments need to cut 2%. Let's cut 2% at all the departments so we can save some bloody money. How about you just not send like $20 billion out of the country to a war zone, or like 2 billion over to Africa? And it, so of course, Carney not able to get a trade deal with our largest trading partner that we do over $1 trillion in trade every year. We are symbiotically connected to the United States in our trade. And what does this clown do? He's running around all over the planet to try to get more deals from all these other places. And he comes back and makes an announcement, and regularly there's no deal. They're just really talking about an existing deal. And what they don't tell you in most cases is all the money that they funneled out the back door to these places before he went to visit them, that are just going to say nice things to us and probably not give us a deal because we're suckers, just giving them all their money. Like Jamaica. He comes back and goes, oh, yeah, we do $1 billion in trade with Jamaica, a big, important trading partner. Yeah, they're way down at the list, maybe number 33, somewhere down there. But $1 billion is really only $200 million, because if we've given them $800 million this year in aid, where's our trade surplus with them? Because for the Liberals, they don't care. It's all about virtue signaling. It's all about spending other people's money to make them look good, to make them... Don't you care about the families? You don't care. They voted against us. They voted against this. They voted against that. Of course, they never explain that all they're doing is borrowing more money to spend on these virtue signaling projects to make themselves look good, which is really only a fraction of the money they're moving around, because the rest of it is going out the door into industries that they probably have shares in to make lots of money, like Carney does when it comes to a huge $500 million purchase with Lockheed Martin for the missile system. Now, or so COVID contracts, PPE ventilator deals to Liberal donors and former MPs, millions wasted, very well documented. There's so much going on with the COVIDity stupidity, and we knew when they brought this in that they were going to make away like bandits. And indeed they did. You know, there was some stupidity going on in the base too for a lot of stuff that we did. They were using existing materials that we had just to stitch up a bunch of cloth masks for people to wear. They were using the manufacturing capabilities on the base to build ventilators that could never be used because you could never certify them. Right? We made a shitload of face shields because, you know, face shields and masks and everything are going to protect you from a virus, when really you get it on your skin, you can just as well get sick as well, right? Like, you don't need to breathe in a virus. It's insane. So, Indigenous Housing Fund, $1.5 billion, only 1% of homes built, right? Who's pocketing all the money? Where's all the money going? Bill, it's... And one of the most enjoyable jobs that I ever did in Canadian Armed Forces was working as the tech crewman lead for the C-130J aircraft transport plane that we have. And as part of that job, I wanted to ensure that I knew the scheduling methodology inside and out. And back then, the schedulers all sat next to each other, because it makes a lot of sense. You know, you'd have your pilot scheduler, your loadie scheduler, flight engineer scheduler if you had flight engineers, but you know, we didn't. And then of course the technical crew members. That's what we had instead of engineers. And as missions would come up and we need to allocate people, and while we're doing all our stuff, and it's great to have those people sitting next to you and you could talk to them. And you know, because you're like, hey, who do you got on this mission? And like, do you know anything about this thing? I'm looking for this message. And especially when, you know, you train local and you maintain local, but the transport planes, they were global, and very slow moving compared to a helicopter. Like, you don't turn a big plane around like that overnight, usually. Anyway, so I'm sitting next to this loadmaster, and we were talking. There's come up in the news about lack of clean water on the reserves again. And of course, we were sending our planes up there like we do every bloody year, because, you know, there's flooding in the spring, and then all the water goes for shit, and then people need help, and then we would send our planes every spring up there. It's like, why do we keep going up there every year? Why haven't they fixed this yet? Oh, yeah. Why do you think that is? Right? Why do you think there's no accountability on the reserves? Now, the service tried to bring in some form of accountability, But we know that any forms of accountability that any government is going to bring in the past is going to be removed by the current sitting Liberal government, because you can't have accountability if you're a kleptocrat. And you can't make you and your friends rich if you have something in there that's going to keep that from happening. Like today, when they were talking to Gary Anderson, our safety minister, in committee, asking him, like, there was a warning from CBSA, our border security agency, that doing away with the visa requirements back in 2016 would lead to an increase in cartel activity. And of course, that's exactly what happened. And so they asked Gary, are you not aware of this report that says this was going to happen? And they're like, oh, yeah, well, I'm not sure. Like, there's many things that happens. And, I said, well, you guys went and returned the visa requirements like last year after it being a massive failure. Obviously, you must recognize it was a failure. Like these guys. And why do they do that? Well, I've explained it to you before, and we have some videos on that on our site, but basically, it's just one of the many things that they do in order to destroy our society to bring about their authoritarian rule. And speaking of authoritarian rule, we're 3 minutes away from question period starting. They are still doing statements by members. So I don't think we have enough time to cover all this Chinese communist background stuff. We can certainly leave it for the next time. I know we had some relevant videos to watch on this. And there is a smaller piece here from Desiree Fixler. And it's on the same topic, I believe. Canada, your crisis isn't the U.S. tariffs. It's Mark Carney. Right? He's lying. He will never grow your economy. Carney is a managerial elitist pushing the Davos agenda. Now, whenever we mention Davos and World Economic Forum and globalism, that's when the people on the left, they roll their eyes and they think, oh, conspiracy theories again, right? Well, it's the facts are out there, right? And it's in his book Values, and it's been pushed forth in all their policies. Right? He's heavily invested in the green scam cartel. Net zero, CBDC, DEI, and many other strangleholds on growth and freedom. These are all things that kill economies because they are all tied to cultural Marxism in order to bring authoritarian control. Right? This whole net zero stupidity that everything needs to be carbon neutral is all based on a lie that carbon dioxide warms the planet. When the science is very clear that carbon dioxide increases after it warms, because as it gets warmer, you get more plant activity, which means you give off more oxygen, which means there's more plant decay, which means there's more CO2, which means there are plants, and it's the more CO2 there is, the more greening there is as well. So we see an increase in greening following the CO2 increase, which is caused by the warming. And just naturally, as it warms, you're going to be releasing carbon dioxide from rotting matter in the ground or anything that's stored in the ground. And it's not like this planet has dump trucks of CO2 that show up and dump it into the atmosphere. This planet has a finite amount of carbon dioxide. A lot of it is trapped. And most of it is going to get released by volcanoes. Well, what's next? A volcano tax? Right? We cannot control this. And besides, this planet has been a frozen ice ball trapped in ice ages far longer than it has been thought out to have life on it, according to geological evidence. So this preoccupation with global warming is just completely idiotic, given the fact that it was even warmer in the Roman warm period and the medieval warm period than it has been now for the past 300 years. And we even had a mini ice age hit us in the 1800s, and I don't think we were even really completely recovered from that. And there's an ongoing downward trend in temperature from the 1930s globally. Now, they will tell you this is different because they are using fabricated model data using heat sinks in urban areas rather than taking the temperature outside of urban areas, just in order to drive the narrative. So we know their climate data is fraudulent, and we know that not a single climate model has been correct once. So of course, the entire green scam is a scam. We're still at statements by members. Yes, we are. Right, so she goes on. I know because I was one of them. I traveled in Carney's WEF circles for years. These folks don't care about ordinary people. They're only driven by autocratic power and money. Free your country from this authoritarian heist, unleash drilling, restore meritocracy, and take back your prosperity. Dump him. Well, I tried to warn people in my life. Looked at me like I was crazy. Right? I was right. I've been right about everything else. Don't trust me on this. So I'm relegated to making videos. What else do I have to do? Still on statements by members. If you're on our site, we have this chaos agent here, which pretty well explains Mark Carney as the chaos agent that he is. And are we still statements by members? Yes, we are. Oh, God, it's the former Minister of National Defense, Bill Blair. The one that they appointed after Anita Anand, before the current Minister of National Defense. We've really had a string of bad ministers of national defense in Canada since the Liberals have been in. You know, and Anita Anand obviously was the worst one. Oh, yes. I think this pretty well epitomizes the whole stupidity of the far left and their harm reduction program.
Is not only outdated, in fact, it reminds me of the 1980s era scared straight that was in place when I was young. It risks undermining the very outcomes it seeks to achieve. The bill mandates a curriculum that explicitly discourages drug use and promotes stigma against drug use as a deterrent. This language is deeply concerning. We know from decades of research and experience that stigmatizing drug use does not prevent it. Is not only outdated, in fact, it reminds
Bill. L'honorable député de Moncton, Dieppe. That these Liberal governments...
Mr. Speaker, Mr. was forever changed. A colleague of mine, their team, Naomi and Austin have house. Well done, Naomi and Austin.
Mr. told a round payment. They've paid the highest it has been today. There is a solution. Canada.
The fact that one of Canada's most right, that Canada is the police are not safe. We're so shocked. Heard him say.
All right, sorry about that. Well, we've covered all that stuff. We will pick up where we left off on the preamble tomorrow. And let's get on with the question period and bring our scoreboard up.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister gave a speech, a depressing speech. He said that in his youth there was a lot of opportunity, but that the future for our young people would not be as good as his past had been. He said that young people need to make sacrifices. Sacrifices? That's what young people have been making for the last 10 years under the Liberals. The Liberals have doubled the cost of housing, they've taken away jobs, and they've created intergenerational debt. Young people have to sacrifice more. What do they have left to sacrifice? The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know what young Canadians have sacrificed in the last election? They sacrificed a pessimistic, negative, critical vision of Canada from the leader of the official opposition. They chose a serious leader, an ambitious government, Mr. Speaker, that is uniting the Canadian economy to create opportunity. We're talking about $215 billion for Canada's GDP. We're talking about major projects from one end of the country to the other. They're going to create great jobs for the future.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, apparently the minister didn't listen to the Prime Minister's speech last night when he said that young people are going to have to make sacrifices. They're going to have to sacrifice even more. That's after 10 years of the Liberals. And they forced 3 major sacrifices on our youth. They've made the cost of housing unaffordable. They've killed jobs with the worst jobs numbers in 30 years. And they've created intergenerational debt. Why not propose an affordable budget so that our young people can have an affordable life? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And every day, here in this House, at every question period, the gulf between this career politician, the leader of the opposition, and an economist who has private sector experience like the Prime Minister gets wider and wider and more obvious for Canadians. What the Prime Minister said yesterday is that we're going to spend less to invest more, that we're going to have a transformational budget with the biggest capital investments in years to create jobs for for young people from one end of the country to the other.
Speaker, yesterday, the Prime Minister made a very depressing speech to Canada's youth. He said they would have to make more sacrifices. More sacrifices. After 10 Liberal years that doubled the cost of housing and drove out the possibility that youth could own their own home. After the sacrifice of their jobs, with the worst employment numbers since the 1990s. After the sacrifice of a lifelong of shouldering high debt. Young people need hope, jobs, and homes. Why won't the Prime Minister reverse his disastrous decade of policies so that we can restore that hope?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Speaker, I had the honour of presenting red seals to 3 new apprentices of the IBEW in Local 230, Victoria, BC. Mr. Speaker, they're proud of what they accomplished. They're optimistic about the future because, Mr. Speaker, we are going to put them to work. Mr. Speaker, we're going to build homes. We're building major infrastructure projects in the national interest. Thousands of jobs, thousands of opportunities for apprenticeship. Mr. Speaker, while the Conservatives come to this House and talk Canada down every day, we're going to be supporting workers who are building Canada up.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
3 apprentices, Mr. Speaker. That does not account for the countless job losses, the highest jobless rate in 30 years outside of COVID caused by this government. Nor does it account for the doubling of housing costs that 80% of young people believe they will never be able to afford a home. But yet the Prime Minister tells our youth that they have to sacrifice even more. All he offers is more costs, more debt, and more despair when Canadians actually need is more homes, more jobs, and more hope. Why won't he introduce an affordable budget for an affordable life?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Every day, the Conservatives come to this House and talk down the Canadian economy. We are supporting our workers, Mr. Speaker. We are going to build, Mr. Speaker. Build bold. Build now with Canadian lumber, with Canadian steel, Canadian unionized worker, Mr. Speaker. We are defending our workers, Mr. Speaker. We'll be there for Canada. I hope the Conservatives join us.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, apparently nobody over there watched the depressing, miserable, hopeless speech the Prime Minister gave to Canadian youth yesterday. He said that Canadian youth need to sacrifice more, Mr. Speaker, when in fact quite the opposite is true. Mr. Speaker, the youth of this country have sacrificed enough. They can't afford homes, they can't get jobs, and now they have a generational lifetime of debt to shoulder. What Canadian youth need is homes, jobs, and hope. Yesterday, I provided the Prime Minister with a plan to do it. Will he put that hopeful plan in his budget?
The Government House Leader.
The only person who's miserable when the Prime Minister speaks, Mr. Speaker, is the Leader of the Opposition. What the Prime Minister is talking about is spending less and investing more. Investing in what? In careers for young people, in building major national projects, in being a technology leader in the world. Today, with Premier Ford leading the world in small modular nuclear reactors. Mr. Speaker, the young people of this country are proud to be Canadians. They're proud to see a future from coast to coast to coast in this country. The young people of this country have a bright future.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It is too bad that that minister didn't write the Prime Minister's speech yesterday, because it wouldn't have bored and depressed to tears all of those poor students stuck in that room. There he spoke about how they would have to sacrifice more and that it would take time to reverse all of the misery that is built up over the last 10 years. Mr. Speaker, young people want to have homes. They want to have jobs. They want to have hope. They want a budget that is affordable so they can have a life that is affordable. Will the Prime Minister introduce that budget so that Canadians can restore the promise of their country?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, you can be sure we are going to introduce a budget. The question is whether the Leader of the Opposition is going to support that budget, because here's what that budget's going to do. It's going to give young people all over this country the ability to stand up and say, that's where my future lies, in Canada, in skilled trades, in technology, in the professions, in careers that are going to give me and my family hope, a home, a community, a job, a future, the best country in the world. Let's build Canada.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, with the budget coming up soon, the government has accused the opposition parties of playing political games, but they're going to have to explain how demanding funding for healthcare is playing political games. How is supporting seniors in the face of the cost of living crisis a political game? How is dealing with the housing crisis, access to home ownership, and infrastructure a political game? Our demands are directly connected to the needs of Quebecers. They're public, and they have not changed. If the government ignores those demands, well then, at the end of the day, who is playing political games? The Honourable Minister of Culture and Canadian Identity. Mr. Speaker, the leader of the Bloc Québécois seems to be changing ideas like he changed his shirts after the elections. He said, we're ready to work with the government. We want to give them some time so that we can help Canadians and Quebecers. But now what are they saying? Before even having read the budget, Mr. Speaker, they're saying, well, listen, we've got our answer for the budget. And it's clear what they're doing. I think everyone would like to know what the Bloc Québécois' position is. Are they going to read the budget before they decide to vote for or against? The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you what looks like political games. It's when the Prime Minister doesn't want to work with others. It's when the Prime Minister meets with party leaders to discuss their expectations for the budget, but he already has a speech written for that evening where he ignores everything that the opposition leaders have suggested. Not a word about healthcare or seniors. No commitments to transfer funds unconditionally to Quebec for infrastructure or for social and community housing. Silence, nothing on the $840 million stolen from Quebecers to give election gifts to the rest of Canadians. Why is the Prime Minister playing political games? He's playing them instead of meeting the needs of Quebecers. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the House Leader met with the Bloc Leader to talk about the budget. The Minister of Finance met with the Bloc Leader to talk about the budget. The Prime Minister met with the Bloc Leader to talk about the budget. I met with the leader of the Bloc Québécois to talk about the budget. But before the budget's even been made public, the Bloc Québécois said, oh, listen, we're not interested. We're not going to vote in favour. They're not going to vote in favour of measures that are going to help millions of Canadians save on their taxes, Mr. Speaker. They're not going to vote for a budget that's going to build hundreds of thousands of new homes. I think the Bloc's position is unacceptable. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, the government leader says that if the budget doesn't pass, it's going to be the opposition's fault. The Minister of Finance has accused us of playing political games. But Our demands have been public for a long time now, and it was the Prime Minister who's chosen to ignore them, and he didn't have any of them in his pre-budget speech last night. Mr. Speaker, this is a minority government. It should act like a minority government and make agreements if it wants the budget to pass. Why is it so complicated to just meet the needs of Quebecers? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers' needs are very well represented on this side of the House, with 44 members on this side of the House from Quebec. These are people who are active in their communities, who represent their constituents, who talk about their forests, who talk about their seniors, who talk about their young people, who want to build a prosperous future for all young Quebecers. And we are a Canada that is strong and united, Mr. Speaker. We have no lessons to take from the Bloc Québécois when it comes to the future of Quebec.
The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
The Prime Minister told young Canadians that there would be more sacrifices in their future. Young people are already facing a bleak future because of Liberal policies, exploding housing and food prices, historic highs in unemployment. Mr. Speaker, past generations sacrificed to make life better for their children. But now young people are being told to sacrifice their future because of elite Liberal policies. Mr. Speaker, will Liberals stop breaking their promises and restore hope for the future of this country?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, you know what youth of this country want? They want a leader that doesn't spin conspiracy theories, attack democratic institutions, and suggest other leaders be jailed. Mr. Speaker, on November 4th, we're going to table a generational budget. We're going to invest in Canada. We're going to build Canada. I suggest a leader opposite sacrifices ego. Put the rhetoric aside and help us build Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, respectfully, that nonsense answer obviously had nothing to do with the question. And when we're talking about youth unemployment, I think it's time for the Liberals to sacrifice their tired talking points and actually get serious about addressing this problem. Now, last week we introduced the Conservative Youth Jobs Plan to unleash the economy, fix immigration, fix training, and build homes where the jobs are. So instead of preaching sacrifice, why don't the Liberals actually propose a youth jobs plan? Better yet, why don't they simply adopt ours?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, while the Conservatives are in damage control mode, we're in build mode. On November 4th, we're going to table a generational budget. We're going to invest in Canada. We're going to build at a scale not seen since the Second World War. We're going to invest in infrastructure, national projects. Mr. Speaker, we believe in Canada. We will build Canada's economy and the strongest economy in the G7. I ask the party opposite to come out of the shadows, support our budget. Thank you.
The honourable member for Richmond Hill South.
Yesterday, this Liberal Prime Minister told a room full of students that they're going to have to make some sacrifices. Well, young people have already sacrificed enough over the last 10 years. They've sacrificed by paying skyrocketing food costs. They've sacrificed with an entire summer without jobs because Liberal job-killing policies have driven youth unemployment to recessionary levels. They've sacrificed the dream of home ownership because the Liberals created the worst housing crisis ever. And last month, rents were up another 4.8% nationally. Canadians shouldn't have to sacrifice for Liberal failures. When will the Liberals stop doubling down on the same failed policies, get spending under control so young Canadians can finally afford to buy homes?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Boy, Mr. Speaker, that speech really freaked out the Conservatives, didn't it? Because it was all about ambition. It was about investing in ourselves. It was about building major projects. It was about the project that Prime Minister Carney announced with Premier Ford, that the Prime Minister...
I don't think I even need to say it. I think everyone knows. But the member may go ahead. Not from the top.
Mr. Speaker, that speech yesterday from the Prime Minister really freaked these Conservatives out because they saw the ambition in that speech. And not only did they see it in that speech today, as the Prime Minister stood with the Premier investing in new nuclear to ensure the jobs of today and the future, they know that the youth...
The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
You're out of time.
Minister told a room full of students that they're going to have to make sacrifices, but after 10 long years of failed Liberal policies they already have, they've sacrificed their dream of owning a home, sacrificed their dream of starting a family because they cannot afford it. They have watched food prices skyrocket and housing starts in Toronto at a 30-year low. Canada has everything it needs to thrive, but it's failing because of their policies. Will the Liberals stop breaking their promises and get their spending out of control so young Canadians can finally afford to dream?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the youth in my riding are dreaming, and not only that, they're working, and they're entering the workforce in extraordinary ways. Let me talk about the young welder that I met at Thunder Bay Hydraulics just a few weeks ago, who approached me the other day and said that because of the programs that the province and the federal government work together on to ensure she had work-integrated learning, she was now a welder with that company. Mr. Speaker, we're investing in jobs, we're investing in youth. Every time we look across the aisle, these guys are voting against the interests of youth. It's very rich for them to talk about youth.
The honourable member for Brandon Souris.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister told a room full of students that they have to make sacrifices. Mr. Speaker, students and young people in this country have already sacrificed enough to these Liberals. They've sacrificed the dream of home ownership. They've paid the price at the pump and for the cost of food. They've spent summers without jobs. Now the Liberals get up and their big achievement is 3 new apprenticeship Red Seals? You gotta be kidding me. Canadians have sacrificed enough over the last 10 years. They shouldn't have to sacrifice more for these Liberal failures. Will the Liberals get their spending under control in the November 4th budget and restore the promise of hope for young Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Canadians vividly remember, young Canadians vividly remember when the Leader of the Opposition, the Conservative leader, stood up and voted against removing interest off Canada's student loans, saving young Canadians thousands of dollars every year, Mr. Speaker. This new government will always stand up for young Canadians. Yesterday, the Prime Minister announced that we will double non-U.S. exports by $300 billion. That means thousands of new opportunities for young Canadians producing the goods that the world wants to buy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister announced in front of a room full of students that they were going to have to make sacrifices. But they've been sacrificing for 10 years now, Mr. Speaker. They've sacrificed the dream of having a home. They're sacrificing too much of their own budget to pay for groceries, and last summer, many weren't even able to find a job. A simple question: will the Liberals finally stop breaking their promises? Will they rein in spending? And will they allow Canadians to buy groceries at a fair price and dream of being able to one day buy a house? The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While the Leader of the Opposition is on YouTube and spreading conspiracy theories, attacking the RCMP and saying that his adversary should be in prison, I choose without hesitation a Prime Minister who is explaining to Canadians how we're building the strongest economy in the G7 by building projects from coast to coast to coast, by making life more affordable, for example, by cutting taxes for 22 million Canadians, by making housing more affordable. That's what we're doing on this side of the House. That's the difference between an opposition party that has a small vision for the country and an ambitious, serious government on this side. The Honourable Member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. We don't have a small vision for the country, Mr. Speaker. We have a fair vision for young people who can't afford homes, who are being hit hard by inflation, who are seeing grocery prices going up. This is having a real impact on their physical and mental health and their hope of one day having a bright future. Yesterday, again, the Prime Minister, in a depressing speech, asked young people to make sacrifices. When is this Liberal government going to stop crushing our young people under the weight of their poor management and allow them to have a better future? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the ambition on this side of the House is ambition that is serious, We'll build the strongest economy in the G7. We'll free the power of the Canadian economy. We'll make the economy stronger by lowering taxes for 22 million Canadians, by cutting GST on new homes, by making housing more affordable across the country, by investing in building an unprecedented number of new homes in this country. That's the ambition that we have on this side of the House. That's what we're going to deliver for young Canadians. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, Ottawa's just announced $2 billion to build a nuclear power plant in Ontario. For years now, Quebec has been offering to sell true clean electricity to Ontario, but Ontario and Doug Ford have turned that down. And today, the federal government announced that it's going to make Quebecers pay for a nuclear power plant in Ontario that's going to allow it to compete with Quebec's truly clean energy. Quebecers are losers 3 times over here. We're losing when it comes to the environment, when it comes to trade, and now we're losing our tax dollars. Is the government going to back down? The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Mr. Speaker, I want to be very clear that we are building a country for the future, and that's with clean energy. And as a member from Ontario, I can say that nuclear energy has helped us get away from coal-fired power plants. That means we have cleaner air for our kids. It's very important that we continue to work to have clean electricity across the country. We already have the cleanest electricity, and we are going to continue to do the hard work to improve that. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, the federal government isn't happy with just making us pay to allow Ontario to compete with Hydro-Quebec. It goes even further than that, because if Ontario develops nuclear power, that means there's going to be an increase in radioactive waste. And what do you think they're going to do with it? Well, they're probably going to be storing it at Chalk River, as they're doing right now. That's on the banks of the Ottawa River, which is the main source of drinking water for millions of Quebecers. The federal government is making us pay hundreds of millions of dollars to put our drinking water at risk. Does the government really think that we're going to accept that? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we should be very proud in this country that we have clean electricity from coast to coast to coast. It's 84% clean energy, and we're continuing to work with the provinces across the country, and we are going to continue to do the work that needs to be done with hydroelectricity in Quebec, and we'll continue to work with Newfoundland on hydroelectricity as well. But nuclear is part of that. Wind power is part of that. We're going to continue to do that work. It's important for our future.
The Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister just told a room full of young Canadians that they're going to have to make sacrifices. Well, after 10 years of the Liberal government, they've already had to sacrifice the dream of owning a home. They've already had to sacrifice their modest expectations of living in a safe community. They've already had to sacrifice an economy where the cost of living is manageable and good-paying jobs are easy to find. So my question for the Prime Minister is, when he made these comments, what additional sacrifices for young Canadians did he have in mind?
Secretary of State for Sport.
What the leader of the Conservatives doesn't seem to get is that Canadians use hope and hard work and sacrifice every single day to build up our country and our communities. But when the failed former MP from Carleton lost his seat, Mr. Speaker, he didn't have to make any sacrifices or be accountable. He didn't even learn a lesson clearly. But when his constituents fired him, he should have maybe paused and reflected a little bit. But since he didn't lose his home in taxpayer-funded non-market housing, I guess that's why he continued to deny it to millions of Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Maybe that failed and flailing Conservative leader should join some students in a class, because it seems like 20 years in this House, after 20 years in this House, he can learn a thing or two about hard work.
Yeah. The Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
I guess, Mr. Speaker, one of the things we also have to sacrifice are answers in question period. After 10 years of Liberal government, we've had a cost of living crisis. We've had an addictions crisis that's left 50,000 Canadians, mainly young Canadians, dead from drug overdoses. And now we have a growing youth jobs crisis, with youth unemployment surging to 14.7%, the highest level in 15 years. If young Canadians could barely afford to put a roof over their head and food on their table when they are working, how are they going to be able to afford it when they're out of a job?
Good job. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
us if we find it a little bit rich that the Conservative Party is going to stand up and talk about youth when they consistently vote against the measures that this government has introduced that actually matter to young Canadians in this country. They voted against budget measures that actually support young skilled trade workers. They voted against the Canada Child Benefit. They vote against national school food programs. They vote against programs that are ensuring dental programs, Canada Housing Benefit. We have a plan to build up this country. We have a plan to build major national projects. There is a bright and hopeful future for youth in this country, notwithstanding the fact that Conservatives don't want to join us in those measures to make it happen, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for York-Durham.
Well, Mr. Speaker, despite all these programs, the Prime Minister still went to students yesterday and gave them a message. You must sacrifice more. Well, the next generation has sacrificed enough. They've sacrificed the dream of home ownership. They've sacrificed the dream of starting a family. He might as well have said, let them eat cake. Well, then the next generation has sacrificed enough after 10 years. Will the Prime Minister reverse course, get his spending under control so that the next generation of young Canadians can afford to feed themselves and own a home?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, our new government is supporting young Canadians with the skills and opportunities they need to build their futures. That's why when the Prime Minister announced on campus just yesterday that we'll double Canada's non-U.S. exports over the next decade, it mattered. We're talking about 2/3 of our economy driven by international trade. It means millions of jobs and more careers in communities across Canada producing the goods that the world wants to buy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for York-Durham.
The only thing this government is doubling is the debt that the next generation will have to pay. So-called generational investment, that is just generational debt and generational inequality. In fact, Habitat for Humanity now says 70% of Canadians say owning a home is impossible. And for those that rent, they saw a 5% increase year over year, Mr. Speaker. That is the result of Liberal policies. Will the Prime Minister sacrifice his policies rather than the future of the next generation?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, when we talk about making generational investments in our upcoming budget, it's because we believe on this side of the House that youth and young people are the drivers of our future economic growth, and we have a responsible plan to ensure that they have the skills and opportunities to succeed. It builds on the work that we're doing to support apprenticeships and Red Seal trades, co-ops, and access to post-secondary education and training. But most importantly, we're creating thousands of new career-starting jobs, investing in major projects, and making it more affordable for young people to buy a home. Housing starts, construction, investment, and wages are up. This is part of our plan. We've got more to do.
The Honourable Member for Kamloops, Thompson-Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, the Public Safety Minister's job is to keep Canadians safe. Yet just today we learned that 32,000 foreign nationals have warrants pending their deportation. That means they are lost. They are wanted. 32,000 people, and the minister doesn't know where they are. We have him on secret recording saying his gun confiscation won't work. We have crime absolutely skyrocketing, and now he's lost 32,000 foreign nationals. So the question is this, Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister fire this public safety minister for failing to keep Canadians safe?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the safety and security of Canadians is the first and most primary responsibility of this government. That's what we've taken very important measures in order to ensure the safety and security of Canadians, including having the highest levels of removals in a decade. Over 20,000 people will be removed from Canada for being here improperly, Mr. Speaker. That's what we introduced, bail reform and sentencing reform just this afternoon. That's what we have, Bill C-12, that's going through the House. I encourage the party opposition to support these measures in order to keep Canadians even more safer, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Spadina Harbourfront.
Speaker, this government was elected with a decisive mandate to keep violent repeat offenders off our streets. While the Leader of the Opposition was attacking the brave men and women of the RCMP, calling them despicable, the Minister of Justice was working with provinces, territories, and law enforcement to develop solutions-focused bail and sentencing reforms. Today, the Minister has tabled Bill C-14, the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act. Can the Minister explain how this bill will ensure the safety of our communities and keep dangerous offenders behind bars?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker,
there is not a less credible voice when it comes to criminal justice reform than the Leader of the Opposition. In the past few weeks, he has called the RCMP despicable. He has attacked Crown prosecutors, and he has suggested his political opponents should be jailed. The legislation we tabled today will make it harder to get bail for violent repeat offenders and will strengthen sentence for serious criminals. Mr. Speaker, criminal justice reform demands a conversation that would engage adults in the rooms. The Conservatives have a leadership review coming up. I invite them to choose one.
The honourable member for Central Newfoundland.
Some NL residents finding it hard to survive as grocery prices continue to rise. That's the headline from CBC today. They go on to say that the price of food in Newfoundland and Labrador is up 4% since last September. Beef leads the way, up 20%. This Liberal Prime Minister said he would be judged by the prices Canadians pay at the grocery store. So will he get his inflationary deficits under control so that Canadians can afford to put food on the table?
That's a good question. The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to remind my opposition colleague from Newfoundland and Labrador that Newfoundland and Labrador was the first province in Canada to sign on to the Food School program. The Conservative Party was the first party in Canada to not vote for that program. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians value this program. Moms, parents, school educators know what this program means. This is affordability, just as the suite of other programs are affordability, and this member voted against every one of them.
The honourable member for Central Newfoundland.
Mr. Speaker, could you have a more heartless response than from the regional minister from Newfoundland and Labrador, no less, where people are known to have a good heart? That minister knows full well that the school lunch program that they created is garbage. It hasn't fed one child in Canada. Mr. Speaker, she also knows that we're hidden taxes from the
Can the member continue, please?
Mr. Speaker, could you have a more heartless response than from the regional minister from Newfoundland and Labrador, no less, where folks are known to have a good heart? That minister knows full well that that school lunch program that they created hasn't fed one Canadian child. And Mr. Speaker...
Time's up. Time's up. Time's up. I'm sorry. The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Mr. Speaker, while the colleague from Newfoundland and Labrador in the opposition wants to talk down programs, humiliate Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and all Canadians, I will reassure Canadians the school food program is feeding children. It's saving families up to $800 a year. This is policies that work. I will always stand for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and Canadians.
The honourable member for Yorkton Melville.
Parents are struggling to secure healthy food for their families because of this Liberal government's out-of-control spending, skyrocketing food inflation up again 4%. Liberal food taxes and regulations don't show up on their receipts, but Canadians feel them every time they shop for groceries. The Prime Minister said he would be judged by the prices Canadians pay at the grocery store. If he's truly the astute economist he claims he is, why isn't he getting his inflationary deficits and hidden grocery taxes under control so Canadians can afford to feed their families?
Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Well, Mr. Speaker, here we go again with the imaginary taxes. They don't show up on receipts because they're not actually there. So Canadians know that. They know how to read a receipt, Mr. Speaker. But just picking up on the previous question, I just want to remind people about how much good this school nutrition program is doing all across Canada, including, as my colleague mentioned, providing dignity to families all across this country so that their kids can get good nutrition in school, feeding healthy brains, and it's saving families families about $800 a year. Mr. Speaker, as a former lunchroom monitor, there's nothing more painful than watching a child who doesn't have a lunch, whether they...
The honourable member for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
Mr. Speaker, the retooling of the Kami plant in Ingersoll was supposed to be a great success. Taxpayers kicked in hundreds of millions of dollars. The finance minister said this was, quote, proof that Canada's auto sector is here for the long term. Now 1,200 of the plant's hardworking employees, many of them in St. Thomas, Elgin, and London, are out of work. This is all despite the Prime Minister pledging a deal with Trump by July to protect Canadian auto jobs. Today, he says there won't be a deal at all. Auto workers' lives and livelihoods were on the line. Why did the Prime Minister dupe them?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Monsieur le Président, nous comprenons.
Mr. Speaker, we all understand that the Canadian and Ontarian auto sector is crucial. We want it to stay afloat. We are doing all we can to help auto industry workers. What is more, the president of Unifor said recently, I believe yesterday, that the industry minister is doing an exceptional job. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
If this is what the Liberals see as an exceptional job, I'd hate to see what they view as poor work. 3,000 workers in Brampton, 1,200 in Ingersoll, 700 in Oshawa, 300 in Sainte-Thérèse, Quebec. That is the Liberal record in just a few weeks, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister promised he'd protect auto jobs. I wish he had been more honest that he meant in the United States. The Liberals have handed out billions of dollars in subsidies with no job guarantees for Canadian workers. Last night, the Prime Minister told Canadians we'd have to make sacrifices. We already are, and it's not clear for what. When will he do his job and stop selling out Canadian workers?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Mr. Speaker, there's no doubt that the U.S. has changed their trading relationship with the world, and that's having an impact on the auto sector. The Minister of Industry is out fighting for workers. She has summoned Stellantis and GM here to hold them accountable. Mr. Speaker, we're going to do whatever it takes to protect workers, defend our auto sector, bring production back to Canada. Mr. Speaker, because Canadian auto workers are the best in the world, and we're going to fight for them every single day. Every single day.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister promised to negotiate a win to manage Donald Trump and to get a deal signed with the U.S. before July 21st, but he did the opposite. He failed auto industry workers in Canada and Quebec. PACCAR in Sainte-Thérèse has just laid off 300 employees. That brings it to a total of 725 employees since the beginning of the year when the PM started negotiating with Washington. Now the Prime Minister is telling young Canadians that they will need to make sacrifices. Should young Quebecers really have to make sacrifices to please Washington? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry. Mr. Speaker, my colleague has just mentioned the example of PACCAR. I would like to note that PACCAR's decision is incomprehensible. We do not understand why the U.S. administration is tariffing trucks, including PACCAR trucks. This just shows how unpredictable the U.S. administration is. We should keep a cool head here in Canada. We will negotiate a good deal. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, I remember back in the campaign when Liberal candidates were saying, elbows up to Donald Trump, we'll fix it. Don't worry. I manage the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, I'll manage this. But what are we witnessing? Job losses in the auto sector. 3,000 from Stellantis, 725 Quebec auto workers. Now there's over 10,000 auto workers in Quebec, but they're all at risk because elbows up didn't fix the problem. When will the problem be fixed? The Honourable Minister for Canada-US Trade. Mr. Speaker, I am not surprised that my colleague remembers the last electoral campaign because during it, Canadians chose a government that was not only ready to defend Canadian industry, but also to negotiate with the U.S. government to score a deal that would benefit Canadian workers and businesses. Canadians chose in the election. They knew well that the Conservative Party would be entirely unable to stand up to the U.S. government and defend the interests of Canadian workers and businesses. We are ready for the challenge.
Wellington, Halton Hills North.
Mr. Speaker, last election, during the debate, the Prime Minister was asked to name the biggest threat to the security of Canada. He answered in one word: China. And now the Foreign Affairs Minister is talking about a strategic partnership with Beijing, including security. These two things seem contradictory. Can the Minister reconcile these two things, or is this another example of the Prime Minister saying one thing during the election and doing another after?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the question of my honourable colleague. Let me reiterate that the public safety and security of Canadians, regardless of the time and place, is always top of mind for our government, including in our diplomatic relationships. At the same time, Canada will continue to become the strongest economy in the G7, and the way we do that, Mr. Speaker, is to diversify our supply chains while making sure we protect our citizens at home. Thank you.
Honourable member for Wellington, Halton Hills North.
Mr. Speaker, another question about what the Prime Minister called the biggest threat to the security of Canada: foreign interference. Last election, some candidates were vetoed for interference and others were targeted, and millions of Canadians continue to live in fear because of threats from foreign interference. The Foreign Interference Transparency Registry was passed into law last year. The government said it would take 12 months to implement. 16 months have passed and still no registry. So when will it be up and running, and when will the commissioner be appointed?
Right on.
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity to answer this very important question, Mr. Speaker. I look forward to bringing forth the name to the leaders of the opposition so that we can have consensus on the Commissioner, and I assure the member opposite that we'll have the Commission up and running by the end of the year.
Good.
The Honourable Member for Argenteuil-la-Petite-Nation. Mr. Speaker, promise made, promise kept. The Minister of Justice has just tabled Bill C-14, which will strengthen bail and sentencing provisions. This will make it so that no sex offender will be able to serve out their sentence at home. Developed in collaboration with provinces, territories, and law enforcement, Bill C-14 will center victims within the justice system. Could the Justice Minister explain how this bill will protect the public while holding violent reoffenders fully responsible? The Honourable Minister of Justice. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague for his very important question. Our government is working to ensure the safety of Canadians. This bill will create stronger sentences for violent reoffenders and will end sentences served at home by sex offenders. We will also make jail time the default for violent reoffenders. I worked with provinces, territories, and law enforcement. I look forward now to working with all the members to get this bill passed.
Sturgeon River.
Mr. Speaker, never before has a government spent so much and delivered so little. The latest example, the CRA. Under these Liberals, the CRA's budget increased by a staggering 70%, yet according to the Auditor General, the CRA has failed to meet its service standard a shocking 95% of the time. So how is it possible that every time the Liberals spend more, Canadians get less?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Speaker. We accept the Auditor General's report, and we will learn from that. But let me be very clear. There was 167 calls made by the Auditor General. The CRA has made 100,000 calls, and we have upwards of 90% calls answered accurately. We will improve. We will continue to learn. But, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to provide a CRA that is responsive to Canadians. Thank you.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Mr. Speaker, not only did the CRA fail to meet its service standard 95% of the time, last year 8.6 million calls to the CRA went unanswered, and if you were lucky enough to get through, the CRA gave wrong information 83% of the time. And what is the Liberal solution? Increase the CRA's budget even more. You can't make this stuff up. Have these Liberals learned absolutely nothing after 10 years of failure?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, I'm right here. Canadians deserve timely and accurate service from the CRA. There's no question about that. But, Mr. Speaker, we have good news. We have good news. We've instituted a 100-day plan. Service levels and access are up. We're upwards of 83% of calls answered within 15 minutes. Mr. Speaker, we are laser focused on the CRA delivering good service for Canadians, and that is what we are going to do. Thank you.
Member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes.
Speaker, auditors report that over 130 valuable Indigenous artworks have vanished from a federal collection overseen by the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. Security was so weak, the theft went undetected, and the department has no plan to recover the missing art, yet they continue to buy new pieces. The entire collection is worth over $14 million and includes cultural treasures. How can the minister explain this blatant mismanagement, and why is the Liberal plan just to spend more money and ignore the crime?
The Honourable Minister of...
Thank you.
Relations.
Speaker, we are working with our partners to address the issue, and I'd be happy to work with my colleagues on the other side as well. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for South Shore, St. Margaret's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, fishing is the economic engine of my community in South Shore, St. Margaret's, but many of the people in my riding are concerned about the conservation of lobster and the risks of the industry posed by illegal fishing. The fisheries officers on the front lines are doing everything they can, but it appears that illegal fishing persists. Can the minister please tell me what she's been doing to combat illegal fishing, and has her plan been working?
Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Mr. Speaker, illegal fishing is unlawful. It threatens conservation, impacts the livelihood of people in coastal communities. And that's why we've strengthened enforcement, added more patrols on the water and at wharfs, and we're working with enforcement partners. This summer in southwest Nova Scotia, fisheries officers seized vessels and traps. They returned thousands of lobsters to the ocean, stopped black market sales, including 200 crates of lobster seized last week. Our plan is delivering results, and I will do everything I can to keep fisheries safe and regulated.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, inflation was 3.3% in Quebec in September. Why? Hidden taxes like the industrial carbon tax, the food packaging tax, and the clean fuel regulations. These taxes will fritter away $9 billion of real GDP by 2030, Mr. Speaker. Will the former governor of the Bank of Canada now preside over the bankruptcy of Canada? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, every time that member gets up, it's at least an 8 out of 10 question. Despite what my honourable colleague is shouting about, I can assure the House that Canada's finances are the best in the G7. We have the fiscal room to invest in the future of our country and our young people. My colleague should join us to vote in favour of the budget that will be tabled November 4th.
Mr. Speaker, not only is the Prime Minister planning to cut women and gender equality by as much as 81%, the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives just revealed that 59% of planned jobs cuts to the public service will impact women. Mr. Speaker, if the Prime Minister wants to regain the trust of women after forcing flight attendants back to unpaid work at Air Canada, why doesn't he stop these devastating job cuts?
Secrétaire parlementaire des femmes et...
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Women and Gender Equality. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is why we are so focused on the economy. We don't talk enough about this, but we have a feminist vision. When the economy is going well, the status of women improves. This is important for building our society. Our government has invested more than any other in protecting women and LGBTQ+ communities. We will continue along this path. We will continue to keep our promises.
The Honourable Member for Saanich, Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow is the 80th anniversary of the creation of the United Nations. Canada has an enviable reputation, but it's from long ago, when we were leaders in fighting for human rights, leaders in peacekeeping. I'd like to ask the Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs, if Canada is rethinking our current position, will we continue to ignore the work of the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, or will we again make efforts to be a country known for peacekeeping and ending the threat of nuclear war?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, Canada believes in a world free of nuclear weapons, and the current arsenals around the world remain far too large. Deterrence is fundamental, and we share the concerns of the honourable member about the unacceptable slow pace of disarmament. We all share a responsibility to protect against these threats, including through the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. At the United Nations recently, I spoke about the importance of multilateralism. It is collective action that will get us through these times, including through the challenge.
Et c'est la fin de la période des questions.
This concludes question period.
Période des questions, je crois.
We will just take a moment so that our colleagues can leave quietly and quickly.
All right. No points awarded today. And no guests up in the gallery to announce, it looks like. Yeah, looks like they're just ambling out. All right, well, if you stuck out till the end, I really appreciate it. And we will close out this session with an outro of yesterday's video that was put out late last night. See if I can get this up. And remember, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock is Blazing Cat Fur Fridays, where we do a cold read-through of the best news aggregate on the planet. Well, the best news aggregate for Ottawa, anyway, for people who think just like you and me. And after that, we would take a bit of a break, and then we're back on at 10:30, I believe, for question period at 11:15. I think that's how it works. Anyway, so it'll be announced then. So look for our Blazing Cat Fur stream tomorrow morning. And in the meantime, enjoy the outro. See you next time. Thanks. Bye.
We will do everything to help Canadians get ahead, as they have gotten ahead every single month since I became Prime Minister.
Canadians, according to this Prime Minister, have never had it so good. If you're that single mother out there walking down the grocery aisle looking at prices rise before your eyes, if you're that senior choosing between eating and heating, that food price inflation is now double the target, or if you're one of those 2 million people that are lined up at food banks every single month, the Prime Minister says you've never had it so good. Speaker, today the Prime Minister and I will meet to discuss the 10th Liberal budget deficit. Our priority as Conservatives is an affordable budget for an affordable cost of living for the Canadian people. The Prime Minister promised he would spend less, but his deficit spending is 100% more. He promised he'd be judged by the prices at the grocery store. Well, they're now rising at 2 times the Bank of Canada's target, and inflation is now once again out of control. Will the Prime Minister learn from the inflationary, costly failures of the 10 years of Liberal government and accept our plan for an affordable budget for an affordable life?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this budget will get operational spending under control. It will balance our spending. Balance our spending over the next 3 years. But we're not going to stop there. We are going to invest in this country. We're going to have the biggest investment in this country in generations, the largest capital spend in generations, the most ambitious trade diversification in our nation's history. We will do everything to help Canadians get ahead, as they have gotten ahead every single month since I became Prime Minister.
Hear, hear. Never bought groceries lately.
Canadians, according to this Prime Minister, have never had it so good. If you're that single mother out there walking down the grocery aisle looking at prices rise before your eyes, if you're that senior choosing between eating and heating, if you're one of the countless Canadians who see that roasted coffee is up 41% since the Prime Minister took office, that nuts and seeds up 15%, that food price inflation is now double the target, or if you're one of those 2 million people that are lined up at food banks every single month, the Prime Minister says you've never had it so good. How is it possible for this Prime Minister to be so costly and so out of touch with reality?
Okay, Mr. Speaker, it's time once again for our economic lesson. Getting ahead means your wages grow faster than inflation. Let's look at the relationship between inflation and deficits. The inflation rate in Canada, the food inflation rate, is the G7 average, and we have the lowest deficit in the G7. What this government is going to do is use that deficit to grow this economy like it's never seen before.
So the Prime Minister says to that single mother, that small business owner, that senior I just referenced out there, that he needs to give you economic lessons. You are the one out there who are watching prices rise right before. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is now lecturing Canadians who are lined up at food banks, telling them that they've never had it so good. That if only they appreciated all the many promises that he's made, promises that he hasn't even begun to keep, that they would then be appreciative of the fact that here we have fresh and frozen beef is up 14%, fresh and frozen cut chucks up 12%, frozen meats up 11%, coffee grains up 40%. Does he believe that people paying these exorbitant prices should be thankful for his economic lessons?
Mr. Speaker, we promised to cut taxes for every Canadian. 22 million Canadians have their taxes cut. We promised to cut taxes on first-time home builders. They've been cut. We promised to cut the carbon tax. It's been cut. You weren't here. It's been cut. And we promised to build this country strong. November 4th, this House will have a choice. Are you with us for those single mothers? Are you with us for those farmers? Are you with us to build this country strong so they can get it?
Mr. Speaker, I think he meant to say, are you with us for the bankers and bondholders who will be collecting record interest payments on the newly doubled national debt? The Prime Minister has literally doubled the deficits that he inherited from the Liberal government, deficits that were already exorbitant and out of control. And what do you know? Inflation immediately started to rise. 2 of the 4 measures are outside of the acceptable Bank of Canada range. All 4 measures are above the Bank of Canada's 2% target. The more he spends, the more things cost. Does he acknowledge at least that every dollar he spends comes out of the pockets of hardworking Canadians?
Mr. Speaker, We are putting more dollars in the pockets of hardworking Canadians because we cut taxes on 22 million Canadians. Mr. Speaker, our focus is putting even more dollars in the pockets of hardworking Canadians. That is why we will have the most ambitious capital investment program this country's ever seen, the most ambitious home building program this country has ever seen, the biggest investment in defense and our industrial capacity that this country has ever seen, and the biggest and most effective climate competitiveness strategy that this country has ever seen.
The honourable member.
Person, and she talked to that person, and she talked to this other person, and she talked, and she talked, and they talk, and they talk, and nothing gets done, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are tired of